when an association fails to maintain a common area, it can be devastating. One, property values could go down, right? Because no one wants to see an ugly pool or a poorly maintained green belt that's just dying. So you have a fair market value issue, but you also have an actual damage issue. So let's look at a roof, a common area roof. It is supposed to be maintained by the association. The association fails to do so, and next thing you know, your unit, there's water coming into it. And there's really nothing you can do there other than notify the association, tell them to repair it, and if they say no or they refuse or they delay, that becomes very problematic to you because your property is now in harm's way. I'm Luke Carlson, and for almost 2 decades, my law firm, L.S. Carlson Law, has been at the forefront of defending homeowners against overreaching HOAs. We're not just leading the charge, we've created the go-to playbook on how to fight back effectively. Join us as we delve into the world of HOA disputes, sharing insights from our extensive experience and landmark victories. Throughout this podcast, we'll bring you in-depth interviews, demystify complex legal principles, and provide practical tips to safeguard your rights. While the information provided shouldn't be taken as legal advice, our aim is to empower you with the knowledge, strategies, and real-life success stories needed to navigate and overcome the challenges posed by overreaching HOAs. Hi, Luke Carlson of L.S. Carlson Law. Welcome back to the show. Bad HOA is the topic. That's what we focus on. And today I have Jenny back on the show. Jenny,
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. And Marty, our producer.
It's fun to be back as usual.
Well, it's fun to have you back. All right, today, should I start with today's topic or should we do a recap, Marty? You are the producer, so you have the lead or.
Well, I think let's just jump right into it. Well, let's first do a recap of the series. We are going over all the dispute types that people can encounter during a bad HOA.
Well, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So that's a lot to recap.
Yeah. So not that we have to recap every single dispute type, but that is the series right now. Our first series was on the board member types. Now we're in the dispute types. We're a little bit past the halfway point in terms of the amount of disputes that we have going on. I highly recommend people listen to the first 2 episodes of this because it's chock full of really good information. But today's topic is common area disputes.
Yeah, I particularly like common area disputes, not because they happen, but because they're very interesting. And from a legal perspective, when you have first let me define common area, right? I think let's start there before I just jump right in. We'll start in the shallow end. So, so common area, what is it? It is a piece of property within the association that is overseen by the association. The association is responsible for the common area. So think of your home, your property. Typically, you are responsible for your property. You're responsible for the inside of your property, if it's a freestanding house, the roof, etc. Yeah. But you might have a green belt that runs behind the property. Well, that is not your property, but it is association property. And so the association, by way of the CC&Rs, they often have an obligation to maintain, repair the common area elements of a community. So think green belt, think if you're in a condo, a common area roof, right? Meaning if the roof, if there's a situation up there, the owner of the condo cannot just go up there and start fixing it. It's not theirs to fix.
Yeah.
Pipes, common area pipes. So also think of a condo here. There's a wall though, and inside that wall often there's pipes. And so those often are considered common area pipes. And so the association has the responsibility to repair and maintain those pipes.
That's interesting. I often forget condo and how that the waters can get so much more muddied considering there's so many people under a single dwelling.
Yes.
And some is yours, some is mine, some is the HOA's.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about muddying waters, if you have bad CC&Rs that define common area poorly, then it often becomes very challenging. And we see a lot of those cases.
And I feel like our most favorite common area is always the pool.
The pool is a big one. But believe it or not, I think green belts, we tend to see the most disputes out of green belts.
Oh,
Why is that?
Well, you have green belts that are in California are part of a slope. So behind your house, there's a slope. It's a green belt. and it's supposed to be maintained by the association. Let's say the association fails to maintain it, and there's erosion, or they don't properly shore it up, and the greenbelt starts to deteriorate, and it compromises the integrity of the slope, and next thing you know, your house is falling into the ravine.
Oh,
That's a common area dispute.
that's dicey.
That's very dicey. That's a horrible situation. A homeowner there has a tremendous amount of recourse, but it's not a fun experience to go through. You also have trees in the common area. You have root issues. So you have, again, a green belt next to a home, and all of a sudden the common area trees the roots are growing into the property, destroying property.
I would assume too, like even a reverse slope where the slope is coming towards your house, and drainage.
Drainage is the next huge one.
Huge one.
Yeah. So even if it's sort of a reverse slope going into the property, or you just have a green belt with irrigation or sprinklers, and those burst, and all of a sudden all of that excess water is going into your property.
Yeah.
So common areas are really a lightning rod for
HOA disputes.
HOA disputes. Yeah.
Oh, how exciting.
Yeah. So that is a common area. And I believe we've identified at least some of the types of disputes we see out of the common area. But Marty, where should we laser focus?
Let's go to why they matter. Common area disputes and why it matters.
Well, it matters because really two things. When you buy into an association, you're paying dues. And the association, a good association, is maintaining and repairing common area elements. And when they do their job, property values go up and your property remains intact. It's not at risk of any sort of damage or danger.
Yeah.
However, when an association fails to maintain a common area, it could be devastating. One, property values could go down, right? Because no one wants to see an ugly pool or
Right.
a poorly maintained green belt that's just dying. So you have a fair market value issue, but you also have an actual damage issue. So let's look at a common area roof. It is supposed to be maintained by the association. The association fails to do so, and next thing you know, your unit, there's water coming into it. And there's really nothing you can do there other than notify the association, tell them to repair it, and if they say no or they refuse or they delay, that becomes very problematic to you because your property is now in harm's way.
Yeah, that one's so tricky because of what we've talked about in earlier episodes, opening up the wall, and are the pipes yours? If a pipe bursts and your condo is filling with water, well, whose pipe is that? Is it my pipe? Is it the association's pipe? Meanwhile, your house is flooding, and the faster you can get that solved, the better everyone is. But those might not be your pipes to touch in the first place.
Right.
Well, if you have a good HOA, Luke, I don't even know if you remember this, but when we first bought in San Pedro, our condo, we owned the house for maybe a week, and a pipe burst above the carport. That was the first
recall
issue.
that. Yeah.
And we had a really good HOA. They helped us immediately. Homeowners insurance was able to step in, and we were able to work it out. But it just shows you that if you have a good HOA, it can be very easy. And
well, it can be wonderful, and that's what you're paying for. You're paying for that peace of mind. And so it's like, okay, on the one side of the coin, I get it. I get why associations exist. But the other side, what we deal with, I mean, the show is called Bad HOA for a reason.
yes,
I see all the horrific stories. And it's when the pipe bursts, destroys your vehicle.
well, and that did happen in the same condo. Later, we had a tenant, and the pipe burst above her. There was a huge hole in the wall.
I remember that, yeah. And so, in that that situation, an association will step in very quickly, make the repair, compensate you for the damage. If you're put out, let's say you have to live in an Airbnb while they restore the property back to its original condition, you're covered.
Yeah.
The bad HOAs say, well, that's not on us, that's on you.
Yeah.
Or like you said, poorly written descriptions.
Well, sort of the ambiguity becomes a different issue altogether because, you have some associations who just don't care. They're like, we're not dealing with it. We're not paying you, sorry you're dealing with it. And then you have other ones that say, well, based upon our interpretation of the CC&Rs, we don't owe you anything.
And that just shows the importance of how CC&Rs are written and how well they're written.
Well, CC&Rs are the foundation of everything that we do. That identifies the rights and obligations of all the parties. And the more articulate, the more precision within the CC&Rs, it just sidesteps so many problems.
That's a really good point because before diving into all this, I always assumed that the CC&Rs were to control or maintain control of the homeowners, what they can and can't do. But in most situations, when you find disputes, for what I've come to realize is that it's also to make sure that the HOA abides by their obligations. I think it's like it's the Bible.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I think what you're getting at, and this is a misconception, and really the purpose of this show from day one has been to empower homeowners.
Yeah.
Because there's this default mindset where you go into an association and you just assume the association has all the power.
That's what I assumed.
You just
right
assume.
from the onset.
The pipe bursts, your place gets flooded, and you're screwed. Why? Because the association sent you a letter saying kick rocks.
Yeah.
And so you just agree with that.
How many stories do you hear of, oh, I love my HOA? No one just comes up to you and say, my HOA is great. Usually you
nobody who calls me ever says that.
Yeah.
They call you because it's not great.
I've never once gotten that call.
Yeah.
But even so, I've heard it at least a half dozen times. Oh, you meet someone, you go to their house, love your house. Like, yeah, I just hate the HOA.
Right.
It's
very common.
No one, I've never heard, oh yeah, it's great. The HOA is wonderful. Like, who says that? It's like it's kind of like Yelp. It's rare that anyone goes on Yelp and they're saying, I'm just in love with this place. It's a place to foster just disdain and complaints. Yes. And that's what they should just rebrand it, calling it complaints.com.
Yeah, no, and I follow that. But again, switching it to the CC&Rs, by educating homeowners, once they understand CC&Rs really is their power source, they have tremendous leverage. Now, part of it is understanding what those rights are, going into the provisions, understanding, okay, how does this work? How am I protected by way of the CC&Rs? And then part two is always the leveraging it. How do you enforce?
Yeah.
Because you can identify, okay, the HOA breached the CC&Rs, it was negligent, is a dumpster fire. That's part one. But part two is, okay, now what do you do with that? How do you enforce? How do you enforce your rights as a homeowner? Yeah. Which is another part of the show, of course.
Let's go into a few more common areas. I want to just come up with a few more scenarios. We've got pools, and I'm assuming in CC&Rs, maybe it says this is how often we're going to heat the pool or the jacuzzi or whatever.
Yeah, some are very specific. Yeah. Some will lay it out, and other times it's just a repair and maintain standard.
Okay.
Right? And so people say, well, what is that? What is repair and maintain? And typically that's set by a third-party expert or some professional.
Yeah.
Who says, okay, if you have a pool, you need to clean it once a week or twice a week or once every other month. I don't know. I'm not a pool guy. But the point is, if you can point to a third party and that third party can say, yeah, this is a pretty reasonable maintenance schedule, it's probably going to fly in California.
Yeah.
It's where you don't have that expert or the association has never asked. Mm. They have these obligations to maintain the pool, to maintain the tennis courts, to maintain the the roof.
Yeah.
And they just don't do so.
We had on the CNBC episode where we reviewed the CNBC's take on HOAs. There was I forgot the guy's name. It was the older gentleman.
Yes.
Right? He just wanted to pet the puppies.
That's
the
all
guy.
he wanted.
Yeah.
And he put his chair in the green belt?
He put his chair, it was a bench.
To
make
be
sure
fair.
we're getting accuracy. And it did not say that it was out. It looked like his front door was slightly, you could almost see his front door from the background, but maybe up further on, but it's definitely a condo association, but it's up in some sort of like a garden area, and there was a bench there. So the big dispute was, well, this is a common area, even though it appeared to be like just off the edge of his porch, but it was
technically
this nice old man, and all he
space.
wants to do is sit in his space, and if I can quote this correct, eat his cookie and pet puppies.
Pet his puppies. That's
right?
all he wanted in life.
And there was a big dispute over that, and I assume that was realistically just because of a common area.
Yeah.
The area was a common area.
Yeah, so I mean, how that would cut, the common area is not for homeowners to encumber or to affix things or even put things. It's not
set up
your
their permanent
area.
cabana at
Correct,
the pool.
correct.
Or to have a wedding.
And you could be the sweetest guy on the planet, but that's not a defense. You know what I mean? Great. He had no malintent in doing it.
Right.
But, at the same time, it's pretty clear what the CCNRs say. If they say you can use it for ingress, egress for your enjoyment, okay, that's pretty clear. But to set up camp, to put a bench,
to pet the puppies.
you probably run afoul of the CCNRs.
Yeah.
Even if you're the sweetest, you're Mr. Rogers. Being Mr. Rogers isn't a defense to violating the CCNRs either.
Sure.
So it does cut both ways.
I want to talk about pickleball for a second because I've seen
the new hot sport in California
and Florida.
Is it Florida too?
Oh yeah,
across the nation.
Yeah, this is sweeping.
I could see it in Florida. Florida makes a lot of sense to me.
Of course, yeah. That is probably a state like national a state sport now, like the official state sport of Florida.
It is
I
amazing.
can see that.
The outfits alone. Do we have pickleball issues for HOAs?
Yeah, there's a few times I've seen this come up.
We've seen it.
Is pickleball issues, and I'm assuming it's because it's become so popular. It's because a lot of people are using it, and there's probably a lot more ruckus that's happening on these courts than How often do you see in an association the tennis courts? They just sit there sat there for years, and you're lucky if a couple people play in a given year. Now pickleball, they put in pickleball courts, and everyone starts to use the thing, and then neighbors get mad, and
the noise increases.
The noise
well,
increases.
Yeah, it's two things. I think doctors are benefiting from pickleball because they're seeing more injuries, so they have more business.
It's
there's been
just
a
big table
uptick.
tennis.
Yeah. But a lot of people get injured with it, and I think lawyers are seeing a lot of work come out of pickleballs, believe it or not, because I never heard of pickleball at one point, and then all of a sudden we were getting a lot of calls. And the calls really circulated around this notion of nuisance and nuisance through noise, ongoing noise.
Yeah,
because they are quite loud, and there's certain standards within the community that you have to meet. There's decibel levels, and pickleball for whatever reason is
too damn fun.
extra annoying. It hits a decibel level. I suppose maybe even above tennis. Some of the things that we've seen, it's louder than tennis. And
I can tell you right now, there's 4 players versus. I guess there's tennis too.
Yeah,
there's more excitement. I feel like with pickleball.
Well, maybe there's more action. Maybe the ball hits the court more. Maybe there's just more utilization of it because it's a new sport.
No,
yes,
it's because the barrier to entry is lower. I think that to get started, it requires less skill to get started. Versus tennis, you got to match.
More user friendly.
It's more user friendly.
Let's be real. It's become a social engagement. I feel like. More so than
we're playing tennis. Right after this podcast.
Are you?
Well, it's like I think the 50s and 60s they had bowling. That was a big sport back then. But now it's pickleball. It's the new
social phenomenon.
Tennis had to have been popular at one point. Otherwise, we wouldn't have so many tennis courts in these HOAs.
I agree.
This is true.
But now it is pickleball. But yeah, pickleball has become a huge nuisance, very problematic. And if it hits a certain level, there's things you can do about it. You might not.
There might be more language now in the CCNRs specifically related to pickleball.
If they adjust their CCNRs to accommodate the pickleball issues.
Yeah, but
who's on the board?
But here's the thing: you can't really contract around a nuisance. You can't say we're going to allow excessive noise all the time, 24/7.
Fair enough.
You can't sidestep that liability.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could try, sure, but I don't think it'd be successful long term. I've never seen an association do that. I've never seen them try to contract around a nuisance situation. But yeah, if it's really causing a nuisance, I do believe a homeowner could, enforce based upon that alone.
Okay.
Staying with the pickleball theme, because we'll just turn this whole episode, cancel it, where this is just going to be the pickleball episode.
Okay, great.
So. It does lead into several different threads here. If an HOA decides we're going to put in pickleball, and they've been established for years and years, and we're going to convert some of the tennis courts that don't get utilized to pickleball courts, would they update their CCNRs? In standard practice, do they update their CCNRs, or should they update their CCNRs to say, oh, we're going to maintain the pickleball courts this time. Here's the open hours. Here's this is the maintenance that we're gonna supply. This is when the lights are gonna be on. How detailed do these things get? Call me
completely ignorant.
It depends.
It's a full spectrum. So you have associations that will just install a pickleball court and call it a day and say, okay, we installed it, and take no sort of further steps to define sort of the homeowner's relationship to the pickleball court. And then you have other associations that really will define it. And normally it's not through the CC&Rs. They're not going to re-engineer the CC&Rs. What they might do is create a set of rules and regulations surrounding the pickleball court, which are enacted into the community.
If they do mess with the CC&Rs, did they amend them? Do you have to vote on that as a homeowner typically?
Typically there's a voting process. I mean, it's a whole procedure to do that.
Yeah.
You can't just do it willy-nilly. The Davis-Sterling Act becomes a relevant part of the analysis. You have bylaws that often impact how you approach that. Yeah. So it's not just an association is just amending left and right. It's a process.
It's much like amending the Constitution.
Maybe not. Maybe maybe it's not that high of a standard, but there are hurdles to do it.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Okay, we'll keep going. So I think we've covered at least defining what the common area disputes are. Maybe a couple of examples of types. It goes right to resolution steps.
Okay.
And we have a whole episode just on resolution, but I think it's worth touching them for people that have not listened to the podcast.
Do like a quick review.
We'll do a quick review, and we'll start off with the first one is document the issue.
Yeah, I almost think that the resolution steps, we should have like an acronym for it. Like it's like a stop, drop, and roll, because it's always the same.
This is true, and we repeat
I'll work on that because listen, it's always document everything, video, pictures, emails. All of that is so impactful if you're going to enforce your rights.
Communicate via email. Oh my gosh.
Memorialize via email.
Yes.
If you can master the art of memorializing conversations via email,
define
you're
that.
already winning.
Define that though.
Okay, so
we've touched that before, but that's a great
break it down.
You have a conversation with the board president or someone on the board. It doesn't have to be the board president, but certain things are agreed to in that conversation. They say, hey, you know what? Put up the fence.
Verbally, yeah.
Put up the fence. We're fine with that. Don't even worry about it. You don't need our approval. What you do is you send an email. Dear Ms. President, so lovely talking to you today. Just to confirm
our conversation.
Yeah, just to confirm the
points.
conversation today, we've agreed that A, B, C, D, and E are fine. If this is unacceptable or is not accurate, please respond to me in writing. Toodles. I mean, that's impactful,
Perfect,
though.
yes.
And if you notice at the end, though, I guess this is part of the art of it, it's to put the burden on them to respond in writing if it's inaccurate. That's a very powerful sentence that you add, because then really what you've done is said, hey, I think this is the situation, but I need written confirmation if I'm wrong. That has magnitude and impact.
Luke has mastered this because he does this with me at home all day long. Will you remind me to do that? Because then it's now on me if he didn't do it because I didn't remind him. It's a beautiful art.
Well, it's a very, it's a handy life hack. Yes.
Now, honestly, that is a really juicy tidbit, though, in terms of handling these types of situations.
We need to trademark that.
Yeah. Well, I'll look into it.
We should write a book on that.
Seriously.
Next book.
All right. So document the issue. Again, reviewing governed documents, always understand the power source, understand the provisions, understand really what rights maybe have been violated, where the association is crossing the line. If you have an understanding of that, you're already leveling up your position.
Yeah.
So review governing documents.
Okay.
Communicate with the board.
Informally should be known.
Again, I suppose this is the olive branch portion of the dispute resolution process. Try to play nice to start. You don't need to be bombastic. You don't need to be overly emotional. If you can be as non-emotional as possible, that's always going to be a benefit.
Yeah.
Focus
Because you don't want to be
the facts.
Yeah, you don't want to be painted as the hypercharged individual, because even if you have merit to what you're saying, it's going to be muddied by all the your emotionally charged nature.
Yeah.
Another good just general life hack.
That's a great life hack too. Yeah, just speak to the facts, present it, and see what they say.
Yeah.
If it goes south, that's fine. You can deal with that later. But at least when you're first presenting it, I think it needs to be very clinical.
Start with those intentions.
The one thing that we might have skipped over that might be important, you tell me, is if you have damages that were caused by a slope, to potentially get a professional or third party to assess the damages on your behalf. So you have it in writing, or you've got someone can write cause in your favor, not in your favor, but just to determine cause, and maybe that will land in your favor. And second, to the extent that there's damages, what will it take in terms of compensation to remedy?
Yeah, no, documentation of damages is always important, especially when we're dealing with property damage. But again, whoever, I guess, be very careful with who you hire. Make sure that they're reputable, they're credentialed. You don't want to hire just some third party random, contractor, for example.
Yeah.
That could come back and bite you.
Okay.
So, yeah, if you're going to do it right. Pay the extra money for the top-notch expert to come in, and
with the proper credentials.
Yeah, and anything they say, make sure you get it in writing. No verbal, because that happens too. We see a lot of clients who say, "Yeah, I have $100,000 in damage." I say, "Can I see the report?" They go, "No, they just came in and told me that."
Yeah.
And so that's fine, and it's not that I don't it's not that I don't believe them or doubt them, but it's not helpful to have a verbal.
Yeah.
I need something in writing.
We need
even
itemization.
Or even if it's handwritten, now I have something to work with, right? And we can always develop it and bolster it down the road, but put those things in writing.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree, Marty.
Okay.
So we did olive branch. So review documents, olive branch, try to work with the association to start. And then what else do we have?
Got rid of
Okay,
fail.
and then we have our if all else fails approach, which is in California requesting IDR.
Well, listen, if all fails, then you're really turning up the heat. But I guess the step before that is IDR.
Sure.
So the olive branch approach, you're trying to approach the association in a very reasonable way, solution focused. If they ignore you, stonewall you, you demand informal dispute resolution. And we talk about that a lot on the show.
Yes.
But I think it's such a powerful tool when it works.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side of it, it can be an absolute waste of time, especially if you're dealing with a tyrant or incompetent, which is what we talked about in our previous shows.
Yep.
But when IDR works, meaning you send a demand to the board requesting informal dispute resolution, the concept there or the spirit there is the board will sit down with you face to face or over Zoom now and just discuss the dispute.
Yeah.
And it could be as simple as, sitting down with them and say, hey, when we spoke, you told me that I could put up the fence. I sent you this email, which confirmed, and now I got this violation notice. And it could just be an oversight.
Right.
It could be something as, oh, you know what? We're so sorry. I'm sorry I had to come to IDR, but you're right. And that's a very rational board looking to solve a problem.
Yeah.
Other times it's not that. And when it's not that, then I think you're really escalating the dispute at that point.
Sure.
Yeah.
And sometimes, listen, IDR doesn't even make sense because the people on the board are so awful. And I would imagine people watching this show, they might be dealing with some awful boards. So as much as we talk about IDR, I'm not saying it's always the right solution. Look at the DNA of the board, figure out who you're dealing with, and then use it accordingly.
Yeah, however, there is obviously a good faith argument that you've done everything in good faith, and you can document and show that the board has operated in bad faith.
Well, sometimes the olive branch approach, meaning you send an email to somebody, you reach out to them.
You're reasonable. You stay on with the
That
facts.
in and of itself might show how reasonable you are.
Yeah.
Especially if the other side is bombastic. If they're
And we've had success in our own HOA, just being reasonable, having a discussion, and then the issue gets put to rest.
Yeah.
correct, even-keeled approach. But again,
It's not always the way.
It's not always the situation because you're dealing with human beings. And sometimes these human beings are unruly. And if that's the case, then it's maybe time to kick them in the mouth.
Yeah.
Which is really the next step.
Yeah. That's where
First
you
step
come in.
of kicking in the mouth.
Well, that's where we come in. Or a lawyer. That's where you consider speaking
Legal
with a
action.
lawyer.
You've done everything. No one's working with you. It's just a toxic situation.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that too, the question is, well, why does the lawyer make the difference? And first I will say that lawyer doesn't always make the difference. Lawyers might still face a ton of pushback, and it might be a very bloody situation for a long time to get it resolved. But what we also see, though, is once the lawyer is involved and the lawyer sends some communication to the board, at that point, if the board has a lawyer, now their lawyer is involved. And sometimes that's the adult in the room that you need.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and you're actually talking to a human being who looks at it and goes, oh my God, you know what? I see what my client is doing. Let me intervene. Let me resolve it. And that's sort of the best case scenario.
Yeah.
And listen, a lot of people assume I don't like association attorneys. And, I will say that there are some really awful ones out there. Some of them are just, the worst of the worst, but some are fantastic. There are some really good association attorneys out there who actually just really want to protect the association.
Sure.
And they want to do what's right. And so you never know who you're going to get. It's always it's somewhat random who you draw. But, sometimes we're able to resolve things, or an attorney is able to resolve things very quickly because the other side comes in, it's an adult, they're reasonable, you have a conversation, and you put the thing to bed.
Well, you're not dealing with the, for lack of a better term, the non-professionals that did not go to school or get a degree in HOA.
Well, that's why I say it's the adult.
Management.
It's the adult in the room who understands fiduciary duty, who understands CC&Rs, who understands how these things are supposed to work. And that's a wonderful call to get. Alternatively, Rambo shows up, and now you're dealing with a Rambo attorney who is just scorched earth, which is fine. You can deal with that. There's methodologies around that. But it's always a breath of fresh air when you have another reasonable professional who comes in and has a clinical analysis and wants to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So.
Perfect.
All right.
Let's get into your favorite, which is a post. We do this every episode is we find a relevant post on Reddit about the topic. And so I found you another juicy one. And you're pre-reading it, which takes the fun out of it.
It's my nature, and I do not like this one.
So, Jenny,
okay,
if
you want me to read it?
Want,
no.
So the idea is we go through the Reddit story. Luke's going to hear it. He's going to give his take as an HOA attorney, and it's always fun to see his reaction. All right.
So exciting. Okay. The HOA board is considering a rule to ban dogs from common areas in our pet-friendly complex. They've received complaints about owners not picking up after their dogs and are proposing that pets be walked only in areas around the complex. However, these areas lack grass, are full of foxtails, and are known to have coyotes. Alternatively, they suggest taking pets outside the complex, which could be a 10-minute walk for some residents. What can I do to stop this?
Okay, before you answer this, I've never done this before, but the comments on this were so fun that I had to include them.
This first one, Marty.
I know. This is why.
What is happening?
I had to add this in because it was so unbelievable. So you can go ahead and read the
You want me to read these out loud?
Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely.
That first
absolutely.
one?
It's too
That's
yes.
fine. Okay.
Yeah, because it's funny.
All right.
Because it just gives you a sense of read the comments because it's one comment and then the comment of that comment and vice versa. So there's a quick string. It's worth
Who
reading.
writes these? That's my question. Okay, but
This is the internet. It's
neither here. This is true.
All right, go ahead.
The internet writes
Okay,
them.
the internet writes them. Some places are actually doing dookie DNA to trace back to the criminal pooper.
Okay, and I thought that was a joke until I read the next
Stop. I
comment.
can't.
Go ahead.
This is actually a very good program. I lived in an apartment complex that did DNA dog testing, and our grassy areas went from disgusting poop everywhere to very, very clean. These fines were hefty, starting at $150 for the first offense. But the complex used the profits to pay the fines to pay for a big party the first year. That's not even written correctly, but okay.
Yeah.
It was inexpensive to set up and pretty easy to monitor for the employees.
Okay, which was interesting. I'm like, oh
Marty,
my god,
this
this is
took
the
a weird turn.
this is the world we live in. But just for the fun of it, you got to read the last one because
we're still going.
this is
Okay.
how this is
I was
how
hoping we were
people
done.
work.
Okay, the workaround is to give a poop sample from a friend's dog who doesn't live at the complex, and then your dog can poop with reckless, abandoned stuff.
This is the world we live in.
I feel like I
Okay.
have to add some decorum to this.
Okay, yes.
I need
Bring
to
it back
elevate
to the
this.
professional,
Yeah, we are in the gutter right now with this, but it's very interesting what people find.
No,
their kind
I
of
This is
analyzing.
reality.
I just thought this is reality, and the solutions to these problems are so mind-boggling, and that people are even finding workarounds for this is just
This is
the front
puts
line.
You,
Yeah.
It just puts you in the sense of this stuff is reckless and out of control.
Was this in California? Not that it matters, but
I
I'm
don't
just
know.
curious.
I don't
Okay.
know.
I mean, I'll analyze it from a California
Yeah.
perspective.
Of course.
but it seems
But anyway, I just had to throw it out there because it's just so insane. This is the most insane one I've ever seen.
Well, I like it because it shows you just how
Absurd.
ticky-tacky and nuanced this area gets.
Yeah.
It's so just invasive in some ways. And, they have real problems. They're looking at solutions. The solutions really don't fit the community. There's pushback, but some are happy, some are not. So, sometimes when we call these things a dumpster fire, this is a prime example as to why these things become dumpster fires. Because there's not necessarily a simple solution. There's not something that's just out of the box.
I mean, we're talking dog DNA here.
I know. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's actually, I haven't seen that before.
Okay, I was curious. That's why I had to include that. I'm like, have you seen this?
I have not.
This is wild.
So, getting to the crux of it, though, I understand the Reddit users. I get it. It's going to be a huge hassle if they change the dog situation. What can I do to stop this? Well, I think the first and foremost, this almost seems like a political strategy that would need to be implemented. Meaning, if you can get a very large majority of the homeowners to take a hardline stance against this, that could be very powerful. I mean, I don't know if you throw a lawyer in the middle of this necessarily.
Sure.
But, the association, at least in California, I mean, they have the authority. You've actually voted them into an authority to make decisions on behalf of the community. And courts do not like to necessarily micromanage boards and their decisions. And so, legally speaking, I don't know if that would be the right attack. I think it would be better to frame this out politically and get a very large group of homeowners who say, no, this is absurd. This is going to have a drastic impact on my life. In fact, I moved in here originally because it was pet friendly. And now it's becoming the opposite of that.
Well, and there are reasonable solutions like providing the dog bags at the park, things like that we see in our neighborhood, where it just makes it that much easier to clean up your dog's mess.
Agreed. And so this might be a situation where someone just threw out an idea and it wasn't the best idea. It was a idea, or, it was a position that they took that maybe wasn't as well thought out.
Yeah.
So that's where if you can get community involvement, if you can get even a petition
Rally
together,
people up. Yeah.
I think that becomes very powerful, because it could be the case that the board just doesn't understand that what they're proposing has massive impact to life and to quality of life. Because if you're now having to go outside of the community 10 minutes, it becomes this whole thing. Okay, maybe they didn't observe that was a blind spot. Or maybe they're just...
So the first thing that you should do would be what? Just contact your board?
Before you contact the board, I would try to put together some sort of, for lack of a better word, like a community action committee. That's not like, I just made that up in my head. But the idea...
round some neighbors
almost
up
like
that are
the
on your
signatures,
side.
No,
right?
exactly. If you want to go so far, by the way, these are people who walk dogs. So if you walk your dog, you run into somebody, you could talk to them and you could sort of start accruing interest in your project. That might be a way to do it, because they're already outside in the neighborhood anyway.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to go door to door, but that would be my starting point. Get a number of dog owners who disagree with this, and then you start working the process. Then you maybe bring it to the board. Maybe then you demand IDR, but you do it collectively. Not just you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Power numbers.
Correct.
But that might still only represent 10% of the entire community.
Yeah,
the dog owners.
You might get steamrolled on this. Yeah, you might.
That's always a possibility.
Okay, last little question on this one though. Do the CCNRs ever you've ever seen? Do they define ever like pet areas or where the pets are designated to go in the?
I've seen that.
Oh, you have seen that.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I've seen it.
So, assuming they do have that provision in the CCNR, they have to get that amended, and that would be a huge.
That could be a huge task, but
and unlikely to change unless you have a very unless a lot of homeowners are going to want to see that change happen.
Correct. And if this was a pet-friendly community to begin with, I would have to imagine that there's a majority of homeowners who own pets. I mean, to label it pet friendly, I would think.
I would assume if they're putting it in their CCNRs, I think that's a good
it's more
indication of it that being pet friendly.
Yes. So that seems. I mean, this seems like a straight political play.
Yeah.
That would be my approach. Bring it to the board. power in numbers, and try to get it through that way.
Love it.
Perfect.
Cool?
Yeah. All right.
Okay, that was an interesting one, but thank you, Marty.
Hey.
He's always trying to spice us up.
I know.
Hey, we can't have the same thing over and over.
I
man.
agree. No, I liked it. I thought it was good.
And it was funny. All right, so let's tease the next episode.
All right, next episode we have negligence. Wow, negligence takes so many forms. That's a big one. So
Well, we cover. I feel like we cover a little bit. They're so intertwined, some of these disputes, that we cover a little bit of each.
well,
The
'cause
nuances.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
even
true.
looking at common area, sometimes the common area is falling apart because of negligence. So negligence as a cause of action or as a failure of the board, it gets into all areas. So it's a big topic. It's a good one.
Don't answer this question, tease it, but I am curious.
I'm scared of what you said.
Is negligence sometimes cause for lack of funds?
It depends.
I said sometimes.
It depends. So
Next
I thought you were not asking
if we're
us.
teasing it. All right. Next episode, we'll address that and more. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you feel more empowered, and we'll see you soon.